Now there's no debate that the Crimson Isles has got to be one of the least beginner-friendly aspects of Hypixel Skyblock. Just look at this place, it just looks intimidating. I think the main people why a lot of beginners struggle is because they don't really know where to start, they don't know what to do first. Unlike this guy we see in the background, kind of struggles to kill anything. Well, let me tell you, Shadow Assassin and a Livid Dagger is definitely not the way to go. It took me months upon months after the Crimson Isles first actually released to actually sort of make any progress in it whatsoever, because I didn't really think I was equipped. But trust me, as soon as you hit Combat 22, it's worth going in there and just starting. Starting somewhere. Maybe watch this video and you'll have a bit more of an idea where to start. When you first load into the Crimson Isles and walk down this middle corridor, every player is realistically met with a choice. You either go right or you go to the left. Some of the strange people go up the middle. Don't do that. Within the Crimson Isles, there's two factions that you can choose. One being the Barbarians and the other being Mage. It's important to note that depending on which faction you choose, your progression is going to look very similar. The only real notable differences will include which minions you can put down in terms of whether you want mycelium or red sand, and then the induction quests are also going to be slightly different, but not massively. So quite literally, the choice is yours. If you choose to be a Barbarian, here you have the Barbarian King. Kind of sounds like Clash of Clans. This area is basically the command center and where you're going to receive majority of your induction quests. Anyway, let's go back to the start. Let's start from the start. So essentially, there is this NPC called L. Some people call it Ellie, but it's L. She'll be somewhere around here in this sort of like little opening. You need to talk to L. So she'll ask you to gather some blaze ashes, which you can basically obtain from just killing the regular blazes. Also spectre dust by killing the wither spectres. And then also magma chunks from these magma cubes. Now, they've actually been lowered substantially in health, which is really nice. I think at the start of the Crimson Isles, they're around about 1.5 million HP, so you don't really have to worry too much. Most people will be able to kill these. Then Elle will reappear somewhere around here. She'll tell you need to discover the Crimson Isles, so that basically means you either need to, well, you need to go both left to the Barbarian and right to the Mage. You'll then be asked to talk to 4 different villagers from each faction. So you basically just run around the town, find some villagers, right-click on them, and talk to them. Honestly, it's just kind of a box-ticking exercise, and it gets better once you get past these initial quests. You'll then be asked to rescue a man in a cave, and then he'll give you some quests to do. Interesting, I don't really know where we're going with this, but anyway, once you've got past that, it does get better. From there, you can essentially just choose a faction, and you'll be given more quests to do in terms of killing a spider, giving sulfur to a pig, rescuing one of the opposite faction members from the opposite faction. It's yeah, interesting, but all self-explanatory if I'm being completely honest. Now it's time to talk about what really matters. There are quite a few useful items that you can purchase from the NPCs in both factions. Now there are a couple of pros and cons. For instance, if you are actually a mage, you can come over to this guy right here. I'm trying to avoid getting killed by one of the guards, and he will be able to sell you XP bottles, which is pretty useful actually. This NPC will sell you Abbey phones regardless of which faction you actually are, which is really cool, really useful. It means that you don't have to overpay on the auction house. Before we go any further, if you are planning on purchasing anything from the Hypixel store, make sure to use code NITROS. It gets yourself 5% off. Also, you should subscribe to the channel. And you should join the Discord server. It's linked in the description of this video. We do slayers and dungeon carries, so if you want to carry and make some coins or just get carried, then make sure to join. Anyway, at this point, if you press tab, you'll see just over to the right of your screen, it will say either Barbarian or Mage Reputation. There are many different ways you can gain reputation. For example, completing your daily missions from the Barbarian or the Mage board, killing each tier of Kudra each day will give you reputation, killing each mini-boss every day will give you 20 reputation. If you're able to drop sulfur or a toy, you can then give this to Seuss every 2 days and gain 40 reputation or 10 reputation. And also, if you're a Barbarian, and you find a Barbarian, right, like this one, if I was to hit this Barbarian, I would get minus 25 rep, which isn't ideal. Obviously, if you were mage, you wouldn't get this minus rep if you actually managed to kill it. Probably one-tap you before you could do that. So you don't want to go around hitting people on your own faction, because that's an easy way to lose rep and kind of set your progress back. Now, I mentioned before that you can get daily reputation. Okay, so there's 5 mini-bosses in the Crimson Isles. The first one is right here, and this one is Blade Soul. It will literally spawn somewhere in this room, and you basically just have to kill it. This will give you plus 20 rep every day that you kill it. You then have Mage Outlaw. The same goes again. You have to kill it. There's different phases, and it can do a lot of damage if you don't have any armor on. Okay. And then we also have Barbarian Duke. He'll spawn right here. Sometimes if no one goes near him for a while, he'll kind of just like find his way down here. You just kind of have to go to him. He'll probably hit you, then make his way back up, and then you kill him. Towards the back of the Crimson Isles, you have another mini-boss called Ashfang. Yeah, it's quite self-explanatory once again. You kill him once daily, you get some reputation. Ashfang is notoriously painful and relatively difficult if you're trying to do it on your own and you're not really sure what to do. So I would recommend maybe jumping in with somebody else while doing this, or maybe just leeching literally off someone else doing it, while you're maybe just starting out in the Crimson Isles. Now the final mini-boss is actually in the centre of this huge volcano. So if you, from the fortress, if you come down to this little path here into the mountain, teleport over this lava, straight through, and now we find the magma cube. This is the last and final mini-boss in the Crimson Isles. This will get you 5 out of 5 if you were to kill him. It's easiest done with a bow. And yeah, it's pretty much as simple as that. Both factions will also have a board. This is the Barbarian board, and on the other side of the map is the Mage board. This board will basically give you daily quests to do. Let's take a look at the quests that I have today. For instance, the first one is bring 5 mutilated blaze ashes to the town board. Now the way that you get these is basically by killing the mutilated blazes enough until they drop enough ashes. You bring it to the town board, you activate the quest, and you get 75 reputation. The next one is to complete a hot tier, and this means a hot tier of Kudra, so tier 2. We'll get to that later on in the video. I'm not going to really mention Kudra yet. Next up, kill Ashfang. So this is 2 birds with 1 stone. Not only is it going to be one of your dailies, it's also going to get you plus 50 reputation just for killing it for the mini-boss daily quest. Then we've got 2 slugfish. Now this is basically lava fishing. We will get to that just a little bit later in the video too. And finally we have Force Rank C. It's a test of force. This is actually a challenge that you need to complete in the dojo. And we will get to the dojo very shortly too. So if you activate all these quests and complete them, come back and make sure that you have completed them, then you will get a decent chunk of reputation every day. Now you might be thinking, why do you even need reputation? What does it even get? Well, if you press tab again, as you can see, it says that I'm 63.5% of the way to hero. Now the hero rank is 12,000 reputation, which is the max rep that actually means anything. Basically, the main reason that you want this reputation is so that you can complete a higher tier of Kudra. Kudra has 5 tiers. So to be able to do the basic tier of Kudra, which is the lowest one, tier 1, all you have to do is basically have L take you to Kudra. I mean, you don't need any reputation. To complete a hot tier, you need 1,000 reputation for your faction, burning tier 3,000, fiery tier 7,000, and infernal tier 12,000. Each boss fight is increasingly harder, but with increasingly better rewards. We have a diagram here of basically the island where you fight Kudra. This is where you spawn in, you walk along this little bridge. There will be basically a little, I guess, shop here where you can buy different perks depending on which role you go in. Kudra itself will spawn here, which is in essence just a big magma cube. And in these little like crevasses and little indentations in the island, these crates will spawn. Now you'll need to fish these crates towards you with a fishing rod. You'll need to bring the crate to the middle to build the ballista, which is basically a big bow that you use to kill Kudra. Regardless of the tier of Kudra, it all starts the same. You need to bring 6 crates to the middle collectively as a team, and once you've done that, basically you have to then build the ballista with the crates that you've collected. Once you've built the big bow, Kudra will spawn. For tier 1 and 2, the easiest way to then kill Kudra will be, basically you need to then power the ballista with 4 essentially more crates, but it's basically energy that you give to the ballista, each crate giving 25% until it gets to 100%. Kudra will basically spew out these orbs, which will be different coloured, like yellow, purple and red. You need to hit them back into Kudra. If you get the perk Bomberman, you do even more damage. And yeah, that's basically it. Once you get it to half health, you can shoot it with the big arrow or the big ballista and kill it, and that is simply it. It gets more complicated, and, well, not more complicated, but it gets a bit different as you get to tier 3, 4 and 5. I'm not going to go into that in this video because that isn't really beginner. Anyway, I mentioned before how you can sometimes get dojo tasks from the Barbarian or Mage board. If you turn right out of the fortress and enter through these gates, up this little winding path through the mountains, and this is the dojo. Now we can actually spectate someone doing a dojo task right here. And essentially they're just little mini games, and the more, like the longer you survive or the better you perform on these mini games, the higher score that you get. The score's recorded in a leaderboard, and your points then basically calculate where you are in terms of the rank. The highest score or the highest reward that you can get is 7,000. Essentially what you get is an accessory, and that accessory is a belt, because the dojo's meant to be like some sort of martial arts, I guess, even though it's not. By completing these tasks, you'll get a score, which then puts you in a certain bracket, which then basically determines which belt that you get. For example, the blue belt gives you plus 25 health, plus 15 defense, and reduces damage taken by 4%. Whereas the brown belt gives you more health, more defense, and more damage reduction. And the black belt gives you even more. I'm terrible at the dojo, so I'm not going to give you a tutorial on how to do it. Watch a different video. You wouldn't want to see me try and do it, trust me. Now, one of the other tasks was to fish up a weird sort of fish, a slugfish. It can be many other types of fish as well. Basically, what we have in the Crimson Isles, if you just literally go straight on from the main fortress up this winding sort of path into this area here. This is, I guess, the mainish sort of area where people fish, but basically, depending on what you're fishing for, you might want to fish in different parts of the Crimson Isles, because basically the chances of fishing up certain fish change depending on where you are. Now, if you actually just go all the way to the top up here, you will find this little hut. And inside this little hut, we have Odger. Odger will tell you which sort of fish you've previously discovered. You can, like, fillet certain fish that give you more collection, things like that. Once again, I'm not really going to go into too much detail, because realistically, when you're a beginner, the only thing you need to worry about is fishing up the fish. And yeah, I don't know, I don't need to go into too much detail, and to be honest, I've not really progressed into it too far myself, so probably not really the right person to be taking advice from. But basically, certain rods and pieces of armour or sets of armour are much more suited towards fishing in lava than water, as you probably already know. Now, there's one thing that I do recommend doing every single day in the Crimson Isles without fail, along with the, the daily quests, but this is kind of even easier. You don't even need to think about killing anything. Basically, if you just come straight from the main fortress down this sort of route here, the route that we took before when I showed you the magma boss, but we can just kind of ignore the magma boss because we want to teleport straight past the magma boss and down this entrance here, past these two matriarchs or whatever, these two tentacles. They're not matriarchs, this is the matriarch. Now, essentially what this is going to do is it's going to pull you in, and you're going to basically look down when you spawn in, okay? You're going to see 3 sort of clumps of pearls. Now, basically, you go up to these pearls, you just click them, and you gather them. You go over to the other side. Please don't skill issue and die. That would be terrible. Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. This is not the greatest example of how to do it, but I should be fine. You need to get all of the pearls. Once you've got all of the pearls, you need to head to the exit. I'm going to die. No, I'm not. Anyway, basically, I don't know how I've survived, and I've really messed this up, but you basically just need to escape with the pearls. That's the idea, without dying to the water, because the water obviously deals damage to you. As you saw, I almost popped it. Now, if you do it correctly, this matriarch will give you 3 heavy pearls. Now, you might be thinking, why? What heavy pearls? Why do I need them? And so on. Well, first of all, it's important to know that heavy pearls, when you get them, are soulbound, so you can't buy them off the bazaar, you can't trade them to other people. Now, within the Crimson Isles, there's a few main armor sets. These armor sets are drops from Kudra. You've got the Crimson set, which is kind of geared just towards doing melee damage. It's a really, really good budget armor set, ridiculously good, especially with the Dominus effect, the stacks that you gain, and the swipe ability, ridiculously overpowered. I would 100% recommend buying it if you're trying to do melee damage outside of dungeons for any aspect of the game. So the heavy pearls aid in basically upgrading this regular Crimson to Hot Crimson. Can we find some? Here we are, Hot Crimson. The Hot Crimson can then be upgraded to Burning Crimson. The Burning Crimson then upgraded to Fiery Crimson, and then the Fiery Crimson then upgraded to Infernal. Infernal being the highest tier. Each time you upgrade it, its base stats increase. You can use heavy pearls to upgrade the other main armor sets like Aurora, which is the mage setup of the Crimson Isles, Terror, which is the archer setup of the Crimson Isles, the Hollow setup, which is somewhat of a hybrid, and then Fervor, which is kind of geared more towards survivability. It's important that you remember to do these every day, because later on in the game, when you come to upgrading your armor, you're really going to want as many heavy pearls as possible to make it as easy as possible. You can increase the amount of heavy pearls you get every single day by purchasing 2 Matriarch's perfumes. Basically what this does is lets you go back into the Matriarch straight away and get more pearls. You can get up to 9 pearls a day, i.e. you can use 2 of these Matriarch perfumes per day. You can buy them off the AH, or you can also buy them through Elizabeth's shop for bits. Now, I mentioned before, another way that you can upgrade armor, or another aspect that you need to upgrade armor, is Kudra Teeth. Kudra Teeth are obtained from Kudra. Every single time you use a Kudra key to do any tier of Kudra, you will obtain Kudra Teeth. Now, from tier 1 and 2, so hot and regular Kudra, you'll get 1 tooth per chest that you open. From burning and fiery, which is tier 3 and 4, you'll get 2 teeth per chest, and then from infernal, you'll get 3. It's important to know that the way that you obtain Kudra keys is relatively straightforward. So for regular Kudra tier 1 and tier 2 keys, you know how I mentioned that you need to kill the mini-bosses every day for rep? Well, a lot of people grind these mini-bosses not only because they can drop decent things that can basically sell for millions of coins, they also have a chance at dropping tier 1 or tier 2 Kudra keys. Now, you can do Kudra without a key, it just means if you get anything good from the actual paid chest, then you're not going to be able to open it. And unlike dungeons, there isn't a feature where you can open it after the run. To obtain higher tier Kudra keys for tier 3, 4 and 5, basically your best bet is to basically grind for vanquishers. Grinding for vanquishers means that you basically kill any mob in the Crimson Isles. Any mob will give you a chance to spawn a vanquisher. The vanquisher basically just looks like a wither. Okay, when you kill, say if you spawn a vanquisher yourself and you kill it, you're guaranteed to get 3 nether stars. If you kill somebody else's vanquisher, then you're either going to get 1 or 2, because it's loot share. If you were to basically get the last hit on somebody else's vanquisher, you have a chance to drop 2 or maybe still 1. Okay, so these nether stars basically translate into keys. And you can purchase the keys, I know, from the Barbarian faction over at this guy right here, right at the front. You click on him and you can see a regular Kudra key is going to cost you 2 nether stars, 2 enchanted red sand, and 168k. Probably not really worth it. But if we take a look at a burning Kudra key, then it's 631k, 20 enchanted red sand, and then 2 nether stars. Each key is going to cost you 2 nether stars, and then if you're Barbarian, a combination of coins and enchanted red sand, which you can just buy from the bazaar. Now, there's something else in the Crimson Isles. You see in the kind of right on my screen, it says Crimson Essence. Well, this Crimson Essence is what you're also going to need to upgrade your armor. Crimson Essence can be obtained from things like completing Kudras. The paid chests always give you more Crimson Essence than the non-paid chests. And as you can see here, yep, Crimson Essence participating in Kudra fight or salvaging items that require Crimson Essence to upgrade. The only other way that you can actually get Crimson Essence is basically by salvaging items that cost Crimson Essence to upgrade. With your Crimson Essence, you can do things also like go over to Vulcan, which is the Crimson Essence shop, and upgrade some of the perks that you can actually use then in Kudra. But what if you're still struggling to survive or essentially just kill things in the Crimson Isles? Well, I've got to say the way to go is probably not going to be melee. For the most part, you're going to really want to focus on a mage build. And for that mage build, I'd say number 1, it's pretty important that you get yourself a pair of wither goggles because they are really, really strong, even till the latter stages of the Crimson Isles or anywhere in the game. Still better than a maxed out Aurora helmet. As you can see here, I've got this Aurora setup, and I still use these wither goggles. I would also highly recommend a legendary sheep pet, as they're not massively expensive, but they will be really, really helpful, boosting your intelligence a lot, and essentially that's not just for the Crimson Isles, it's just for mage in general. If you have a textbook on there as well, it also basically doubles the pet's intelligence. Another essential item to get when in the Crimson Isles is a Fire Veil wand. Essentially what this does is when you right click, it creates a veil of fire around you for 5 seconds that deals a certain amount of damage per second. It's basically passive damage that you actually get, and of course it's a mage weapon, so makes sense that you also have ultimate wise on there. I wouldn't say it's massively needed, but yeah. For the most part, it doesn't really matter what attributes you have on there. I've just realised I haven't even mentioned attributes yet. That's something I'll do just after I go through these items. Anyway, just to give you a bit of a demonstration, if we just find, I mean, I don't have any armor on, so I'm probably going to die, but if you just right click, it kind of just deals damage to these. I mean, look how quickly it actually ended up killing that 1 million health as well, with no armor on. So yeah, it's definitely worth buying for 15 million coins. It is essentially going to carry. Now, another item that's very, very useful is a Vuvu doll. Its right-click ability shoots arrows from every direction around the targeted monster. Monsters hit by at least 1 arrow are slowed and receive 50,000 or however much damage per second for 10 seconds. So in addition to a regular voodoo doll, which is about 1.4 million coins, there's also a jinxed voodoo doll, which is essentially just a better version of it, which is going to cost you 16 million coins, which does the same thing, but it just does more damage and lasts for longer. It also costs less mana, and has a lower cooldown. So you can quite easily pair this with a Fire Veil wand, and really for a beginner, it's really good. Equipment is another thing that you should really look at. Equipment essentially goes in these slots right here, and a very easy free piece of equipment to get is from the dojo, like I mentioned before. It's essentially just a battle of wits. Can you keep your patience? And to be honest, even if you end up just getting a white belt or a very low tier belt, it's better than nothing and it's free, so probably worth doing. Now, the molten pieces of equipment are very versatile because the base stats can basically mean that you can gear it towards anything. It gives you health and defense, which is always useful, and a bit of strength. For example, I used 2 molten pieces in my mage build with mana pool and mana regen attributes on, which basically what you want for mage. It's god roll, it's expensive, but it can be worth it. At the same time, I also have a different setup of molten with veteran and vitality on, which is more geared towards, I guess, realistically probably slayers, but mainly using melee damage. Both are the same pieces of equipment, just geared differently with different attributes. So this set, the molten set, even if you're not really too bothered about the attributes, you could probably pick up for around about 5 or 6 million coins, and it will do the job. It's better than nothing. It's going to give you a bit of survivability and a bit of strength. Of course, you can then focus on attributes if you want to put more coins into it. You can also reforge it and things like that too. Okay, I should probably talk about attributes. Let's just take a quick look at what I mean by attributes. On this piece of Aurora right here, the attributes show below the enchantments and above the abilities. So here we have Mana Pool 7, which gives us 140 intelligence, Mana Regeneration 7, which gives us increased Mana Regeneration by 7%. Attributes only appear on items basically from the Crimson Isles. Hence why things like my Necron set don't have attributes, things like my Storm set don't have attributes. There are many, many, many different attributes. The higher tier of Kudra that you've completed will basically dictate which attributes that you can drop or use from Kudras or on your armor. If I'm being completely honest, for a beginner, I wouldn't worry about it. If you just simply want to exist in the Crimson Isles, you don't need to bother about attributes. Despite of what people will say, you might get clowned for having somewhat rubbish gear, but at the end of the day, you might be level 100 and being able to survive in the Crimson Isles. I just ignore people. But let this be known, a lot of people can get away with using things like Storm Armor, a decent Storm set with Wither Goggles, relatively far into the Crimson Isles and Kudra. You don't need an Aurora set with Mana Pool and Mana Regen 7. It just means when you get to the higher tiers, especially of Kudra, like tier 4 and 5, it makes it a lot easier. And that also means that you don't just instantly get kicked from parties, because people have a tendency to do that. But if we take a look at some of the attributes that you can get, for instance, on this Crimson piece that I have here, I have Dominance 7, which means that I gain 10.5% damage when at full health. I also have Veteran 7, which grants me plus 5.25 Combat Wisdom, which means that I get more Combat XP per kill. Of course, you can put these attributes also onto pieces of equipment as well, and certain combinations of like attributes are considered a god roll, which makes them sell considerably more than anything else. For instance, the cheapest Aurora chestplate on the market is 600,000 coins, yet a god roll Aurora chestplate with Mana Pool and Mana Regeneration on, the cheapest one is 225 million. So that's just basically how vast the difference is. But I wouldn't worry too much about this as just being a beginner. Just crack on with what you need to do. You can combine and mismatch tons of pieces of armor set in the future, but for now, just get whatever's cheapest, honestly. Okay, I want to talk about some easy money making methods that you can do in the Crimson Isles. For instance, mining red sand. It's as simple as that. It can make you between 3 to 5 million coins per hour. It's not the greatest money making method in the world. Also, it's not the worst. You'll also get some pretty quick collection. I mean, if you're a beginner, it might not be a bad option. If you can make more than 3 or 5 million coins an hour anywhere else in the game, which most people probably can, I wouldn't recommend it. But it's not the worst thing to do in the world. It requires very little effort, very little requirements. You just mine it. And the same goes on the other side of the map with the mycelium. Mining mycelium can land you probably a similar amount per hour. There used to be a crazy setup of using like a pet not really too prominent anymore, but still, just from simply mining mycelium, you can make a decent amount of money per hour. It's nothing crazy, but it's something maybe to consider if you are really struggling. Now, apart from Kudra and Blaze Slayer, which I will get onto in a little bit, I'm not going to explain it too much, but I'm going to make sure you know what it is. There are a few other money-making methods in the Crimson Isles, and essentially what it is when you kill a mob in the Crimson Isles, each mob drops a unique item. And that item can't be purchased on the bazaar. The only way to obtain those items are simply through killing the mobs. So, let me give you a bit of an example. Every time you kill the Barbarian Duke, you will receive one piece of leather cloth. Now, an item like the Gauntlet of Contagion is a piece of equipment. What it does is killing an enemy causes an explosion dealing 10% of their total health as damage to total enemies within 2 blocks. It's a relatively useful piece of equipment to have if you're using something like a Hyperion. To craft this, you need leather cloth, and quite a lot of it. 36 leather cloth, and 3 pieces of enchanted mycelium cubes. Now, you can buy these enchanted mycelium cubes off the bazaar, so that's not really too big of an issue. However, these leather cloths, you can only get through killing Barbarian Duke. You can't buy them, they're soulbound. So, if you were to go on a rotation and maybe kill Barbarian Duke, Mage Outlaw, and then Blaze Soul, eventually you're going to amass quite a lot of these leather cloths to a point where you'll be able to craft a Gauntlet of Contagion. And I wouldn't say it's a main money making method, but it's definitely something to do on the side. Now, the great thing about Gauntlet of Contagions is, of course, they have attributes on them. So even if you get the most terrible attributes known to mankind, like this one here, Blazing Resistance Lifeline, it's terrible. Nobody's going to want that on a Gauntlet of Contagion. It's still worth 9.5 million coins. But if you get very lucky and get something like a Mana Pool Mana Regeneration Gauntlet of Contagion, that's going to then cost 122 million coins. So every time you craft one of these, not only are you guaranteed 9.5 million coins, you also have a chance of making hundreds of millions. It's a bit of a gamble, but if you're already killing these bosses, maybe for keys or for whatever it is, then it's a very nice piece of side income, even if you only gain 9.5 million coins. And it isn't just the leather cloth and the Barbarian Duke that you can do this with. For instance, you can do a very similar thing by killing the magma cubes, and basically majority of the things in the Crimson Isles. The Gauntlet of Contagion with the leather cloth and the Barbarian Duke is probably just one of the best ones to do. Like I said, there are better money making methods in the Crimson Isles. For instance, like tier 3, 4, 5 of Kudra is good for money. It just is good for money. You're going to be making profit off probably 95% of the runs. And Blaze Slayer could be even better. So we're going to talk a little bit about Blaze Slayer. Now, the Blaze Slayer is the newest Slayer, other than Vampire Slayer, but that's in the Rift, so does it count? It does count, but it's not one of the main Slayers. Now, Blaze Slayer is notoriously hard. There's no other way to put it, it's difficult. Especially for a beginner in the Crimson Isles, I probably wouldn't even go near it, because it's going to be very, very difficult. Even a tier 1 is going to be difficult. But I can give you a bit of an idea what's going on. Essentially, this is the main area right here, towards the back of the Crimson Isles. It's a cave, and this is where you'll find the really high health blazes. For instance, the regular blazes right here have 5.5 million health. Not an easy place to go to. On the left of this little entrance here, we have this NPC. This NPC will, if you go through a little bit of basically the talking that he's going to do, he'll sell you a moody grapple shot, which is going to cost about 3.5 million coins. Now, it's actually very useful. Throw a hook to grab and pull blazes. Pulling a blaze multiplies its damage taken by 2 times and stops it from flying. So essentially, it stuns it and makes you deal double damage to the blazes. Now, this is very useful when you're killing blazes to spawn your boss, or even, to be honest, if you really struggle, just killing the regular blazes to do the daily challenges. For Blaze Slayer, there are 2 actual dedicated swords that you can use, and they have 3 tiers. These here are tier 2, and you see we have the Mordred's Dagger and also the Kindlebane. But at tier 1, we have the Fire Dust and the Twilight, and at tier 3, we then have the Death Ripper and also the Pyro Chaos. I think that's it. The tier 3 daggers are very expensive to purchase, tier 2 a bit cheaper, and tier 1 relatively easy to obtain. So by all means, you could complete some tier 1s, if you can. But there's not really any point, for a beginner, me going into any more depth with Blaze Slayer. I've done a bit of Blaze Slayer in the past, I've not done a massive amount, so there's probably other people that, if you really do want an explanation, who have made far better in-depth guides than I ever could. And to be honest, unless I'm mistaken and I've missed something blaringly obvious, which is entirely possible, I think that is the beginner's guide to the Crimson Isles. It's a very confusing place at first. Hopefully this video has somewhat shed some light on what you need to do, what you need to work towards, and so on. Anyway, this is going to be the end of this video. I hope you all have enjoyed. If you have, make sure you leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.